Welcome, everybody, to the April edition of IndieSeen, and we're doing something really special this month. I am thrilled beyond belief, and as Sujewa is as well, to welcome some very special guests. We have Raphael Sbarge, the director of the documentary Only in Theaters, which chronicles the family history, the life story, the independent movie business journey of the Laemmle family. And I have Greg and Tish Laemmle here with us as well. It is a pretty stunning documentary that takes some crazy twists and turns. I compare it in my mind to Steven Spielberg's Jaws for reasons that I'll get into later, and in the best possible way. But yeah, we're going to talk about that movie tonight. And I'm very excited, as I probably have mentioned a couple of times already. But before we get into that, we're going to do our regular IndieSeen roundup of what's going on with Sujewa specifically. And I'm going to get the title right this time because I botched it last month. Cosmic Disco Detective Renee.
That's right. Raphael, your mic is off, according to what I see.
Yep, okay. I'm here.
Okay, good. All right. Back to the show. So every month when we do one of these shows, I have an update on my movies. This episode is very all the roads sort of line up because the Cosmic Disco Detective Renee will open at a Laemmle theater, Glenmont. Yeah, Glenmont, right? No, Glendale, right? Glenmont is Maryland, and Glendale is on Maryland Avenue, so I get all that confused. There's a town called Glenmont in Maryland. Anyway, so, and since Tish and Greg and Raphael don't know too much about my past movies and Renee movie, I'll back up a little. I did a movie called Werewolf Ninja Philosopher that played in Chicago that Ian liked a lot. That's how we met. And Ian selected that movie as one of the best for 2019. So obviously, we're going to talk and hang out because critics who like your movie are valuable friends. So that was a detective comedy. Then I did in 2014, I did Breakthrough Weekend, another detective comedy. 2020, I did The Secret Society for Slow Romance, which is kind of like My Dinner with Andre. I acted in it. And this is like my 6th fiction feature now. And I've done theatrical screenings for all of my movies, going back to 1990s. I haven't really developed the online distribution part really well yet, but I have time to get into it. Cosmic Disco Detective Renee is sort of it's really, I mean, it's not like the teaser trailers that I've been putting out, which are very experimental. The movie is a comedy. It's sort of like a blend between X-Files and Seinfeld, sci-fi comedy. And the government hires my character to figure out why immortal time travelers are going back in time, and if they're messing with the past, and if that's a danger for us. So that's the main story. So while I was making that movie, which I'm still at it, and it'll be done mid-April, I learned about Only in Theaters documentary in like late January of this year. Then I learned about Laemmle Theaters. I was like, oh, that would be a great place to open the movie. So now everything comes together. And today we're talking about the Laemmle Theaters and their documentary, Only in Theaters. I think that's a good update on the project team.
Excellent. And so, yeah, you're going to be...
have an opening date, right?
Yeah, the 19th. And hopefully... Of May. And hopefully it'll play in the Laemmle Theaters for years to come.
I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, when another idea that I had was to try to do like a 1 year of theatrical screenings, which I'll talk to, I mean nationwide, which I'll talk to Raphael and Greg about, since you guys are kind of wrapping that up right now. And some other time I'll get your advice on doing that. So yeah, I'll have regular trailers up in mid-April. It should be a really fun movie. I'm trying to make it accessible for a mainstream audience, but still, it'll be a weird art house movie.
I don't know if you could make a straight, mainstream movie. Sujewa, that's what I love about you.
I don't think so.
All right. So I do want to kind of kick off with the foundations of Only in Theaters, and this is going to take us kind of way back. Raphael, I want to start with you. You are an actor as well as a filmmaker. I grew up, watching you in Risky Business and My Science Project, and you've been in. I was looking at your IMDb. I feel like you've been in or on every major television show of like the last 3+ decades. So you've been a very successful working actor, and now you've got this documentary out, and I know you've got other features that you've worked on and some shorts as well. Could you tell me about making the transition from being an actor to a director, and ultimately, what inspired you to reach out to the Laemmles to help tell their story?
Right. Well, the simple question, I guess, the simple answer, I guess, is that, as an actor, I'm a storyteller, right? So I feel storytelling is what I love to do, and I've spent my life doing. And so the learning of how to tell it visually was bumpy in terms of when I started initially, and but I'd spent my life on sets and growing up around it, and I had a lot of wonderful friends who were very kind and patient with me. In the course of that, as you start to, I just started to feel like I sort of had a bit more confidence about how I was doing this and how to essentially get a story told. But in the course of really trying to figure out telling the story about the Laemmles, the fact is that, as I say in the movie, I'm representative of so many filmmakers now, like Sujewa, who basically reached out and contacted the Laemmle theaters and was received with a warm welcome. I inserted myself late in the process into the cut, only because, again, I felt like there was so many people that I'd met who were similarly affected by this remarkable family's commitment to film and the art of film, and filmmakers who make them, and the audiences who love them and have done so for close to 100 years. So it in and of itself, that was a sort of a remarkable thing. That's what drew me in, the legacy story. From there, we kind of landed. We kind of got, as they say, an e-ticket, right? Sort of a kind of a remarkable ride through then this journey that they went through over these like two and a half years, and we filmed this over 2.5 years, and that process was, some of which we all went through in the pandemic, and some of it was really unique to this family and Greg's specific sort of the challenges that he faced as a film, as a film exhibitor, and as someone also who cared deeply about the mission of preserving this opportunity to enjoy films only in theaters.
Yeah, I mean, you narrate the documentary, and we catch glimpses of you like very early on in the film. Just almost if you didn't recognize who you were, I knew what you looked like and everything. I was like, oh, that's the director. But you don't insert yourself, like, this is not a story about you talking to these folks, and it was it's very much an objective, or as objective as you can be, kind of point of view. Was that always the sort of mission? Was there did that kind of change as the story evolved, or was it always this idea of like, I'm going to get out of the way? I know I'm an actor and I'm used to being on screen, but this is really about other people.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I probably wasn't being clear. Absolutely, this was always about the Laemmles. What happened was, when I really looked at my first cut, some of the feedback I got was that there needed to be some connective tissue. There needed to be some way to kind of figure out a way to do the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie, and find a way to thread the beads on the necklace, as it were. And so as a result, I, kicking and screaming, came to this as a kind of a voiceover and, or sort of a participant in the wings, as it were. There was never any desire to want to be on camera on this. This was really this family's journey. the fact is that there is a very personal, intimate story about a family that they really kind of brought. Greg and Tish really opened their lives and their heart and their journey and sustained it for a very long time. And that really is where all the focus is. This is a family story.
It very much is. And Greg and Tish, first of all, I realize I breezed past everybody's introduction without giving a, hey, how you doing? So how you doing?
Thanks.
All right. To that point about family and Raphael wanting to, help tell the story of your lives, you've, as people who own independent art house theaters, I'm sure in your lifetimes you've seen hundreds, probably thousands of documentaries. What was it like being approached by someone to make you the subject of it? Was there any hesitancy there? And specifically, was there hesitancy to open yourselves up and agree to be kind of followed and give over this kind of intimate access to a story that, started off as like, hey, our family's in the business, to, hey, streaming might kill us, to, hey, something else might kill us?
I mean, look, yeah, we've met a number of documentary filmmakers over the years, and almost to a person, they've always said, yeah, someone should make a documentary about your Laemmle theaters. And Raphael was unique. He was the person that walked in and said, I want to make my next documentary about Laemmle theaters. And I had seen two of his previous documentaries. We're actually in one of them. He did a film on the Los Angeles River called A Concrete River, and then a follow-up film called LA Foodways about the history of agriculture in Los Angeles. So what I sensed from those movies was that here was someone who cared about the city of Los Angeles, its history, and the things that makes Los Angeles unique. In many cases, the things that that the people who live there don't really even know about, and yet how important those things have been to shaping the community. And I saw resonance in that and how it related to Laemmle theaters. So I was very comfortable with the idea, that he wanted to make the film. This was his, his ask, and his ability to place the company within that, within what I thought was, an important context for the story.
In terms of opening up, I've said this before, Raphael is the kind of person that makes you feel completely safe and like in a
Cared for.
Yeah, cared for. No, that's fine. He's open. And there was one moment when he was interviewing me and I said something that made me cry, and he started crying, and I thought, oh, I made the director cry. And you just can't help but feel that he was in it the same level that we were in it, and it helped everybody be open.
Important question. Where are we on the action figures and the play sets? The Laemmle Theaters play sets, the Greg and Tish action figures.
Yeah, we've got Mattel has signed up for the concession stand.
Awesome.
That is an important question. Absolutely.
It'll be bigger than Star Wars action figures.
If you pull the string on my back, it says, would you like butter on that?
And now a serious question. Greg, can you briefly introduce your theaters? Because a lot of the people in the rest of the country, like Chicago, don't really know how many theaters and where they are.
Right. So Laemmle Theaters was founded in 1938 by my grandfather, Max, and his brother, Kurt. It started with 2 theaters in the Highland Park neighborhood of Los Angeles. Max and Kurt were introduced to the movie business by their great uncle or their first cousin once removed. That's their father's first cousin, who was Carl Laemmle. And Carl Laemmle happened to be the founder of Universal Studios. So, so that's 4 or 5 generations of Laemmles now in the film business.
How many theaters do you have now, and where are they?
Right. So at the time of the pandemic shutdown, we had 7 locations. They're all in Los Angeles County, from the beach in Santa Monica all the way inland to Claremont. And we were in construction on a 8th location in Newhall, which is north part of Los Angeles County. And we were shut down for 13 months by the pandemic. And we reopened all 8 locations ultimately in April and May of 2021.
Wild.
And just to put this in context, so for people in Chicago and or for other cities that might not know about Laemmle theaters, and we played now all over the country and internationally, people that would knew nothing about Laemmle theaters. It's a Los Angeles art house cinema chain, obviously with this incredible history. There's been a Laemmle in the movie business since there's been a movie business. It may, at least initially, to someone in Chicago, you might think, well, why is that important to me? Why would I be interested in a movie theater in Los Angeles? And an important fact, actually, what I've discovered is in the showing of this film is that there are versions of Laemmle theaters, different and unique in their own way, but versions of them all over the country and again all over the world, where these are theaters dedicated to really a different kind of programming, programming that doesn't involve superheroes, and that really speaks to your heart and to your brain, and really is sort of perhaps more adult program, as one would say. Although I tend to sort of shudder at that comment, but that is it tends to be a brand of film curation that really speaks to both foreign independent documentary film that is really often lacking in the mainstream. This is what Laemmle Theaters has done, and what in Los Angeles, again, while that's a world away from Chicago, it was and has been, of course, sort of the transmission point of so much of the entertainment business. And Laemmle, and we speak about this in the film, has affected so many filmmakers who spoke to us: Cameron Crowe, James Ivory, Nicole Holofcener, Ava DuVernay. These were all filmmakers who were directly influenced, affected, and really whose careers sometimes turned on the fact that this theater existed. They were inspired to become directors, and this is if you don't know Laemmle, perhaps in your neighborhood an art house cinema that really affected you, that gave you that first experience of like, oh my God, that's not a movie, that's cinema. The differentiation between what a popcorn movie is and what cinema can do to you, how it can, in the span of an hour and a half or 2 hours or 3 hours, or in Sayajit Ray's case, maybe much longer, but it can literally redefine who you are. It could turn your DNA in a way in that moment and shift something in you. That's the magic of a cinematic moment in a theater. That is a very special thing. And perhaps there's those theaters in Chicago, and perhaps they also, like Laemmle, are challenged at this point. And so that's the bridge, I guess, from one city to the next.
Well, yeah, I mean, in Chicago, and I should mention, we'll talk about this toward the end of the episode, but coming up this coming weekend, Saturday, April 8th, Greg and Tish, you will be in Chicago at the very theater that Raphael is describing. For me, the Music Box Theater. It was in the late 80s when I was 11 years old. My dad took me to go see, it was 2 movies around the same time. It was Akira, the anime epic, and then also a documentary called Comic Book Confidential. I was big into comics back then, and that blew my head wide open. But I saw both of those in the Music Box, and that was the first time that I'd gone to an art house theater. Now, the thing that, and there's plenty of art house theaters in the Chicago area, or kind of old movie palaces, some of which specialize in independent cinema, some of which are movie palaces that they've kind of converted, and they show first run blockbusters and a mixture of both. I got married at the Pickwick in Park Ridge a number of years ago. Yeah. But one of the things that I noticed watching the documentary, and I've never been to a Laemmle theater, and I hadn't heard of the family or the brand before watching this documentary, but looking at the different kind of interview pieces that take place in the auditoriums of the Laemmle theaters, it looks very nice. I'm trying to figure out the best way to phrase this. Like, they look like really nice seats. They looked almost like AMC style auditoriums, like the really kind of an upscale aesthetic to an art house theater. Whereas, around here, it is kind of a grab bag. Sometimes you'll get a really nice movie palace and it doesn't look like they've updated the seats since the 20s, So I wanted to talk a bit about that. Like, what is that? And this is kind of outside of the documentary, but since I have you here, was that a conscious decision? Did you find these theaters and upgrade them? Did you build new? And what was the vision for bringing that kind of mainstream experience to the art house experience?
Well, I mean, look, you know, a multiplex experience. I mean, you know, well, look, we operate commercial, for-profit movie theaters. Efficiency with regard to space and rent, you know, is a major factor. And as much as I love seeing a movie in a, you know, 800-seat palace, and in fact, some of my formative movie going experiences were in that kind of setting. You know, the reality is that in some cases, you know, in this day and age, you need to have, you know, a 50 to 100-seat auditorium, and multiple ones at that, you know, size, in a complex showing, you know, 3 to 8 movies or different screens. Once we accepted that we were going to, you know, operate multiplex movie theaters throughout Los Angeles County, you know, playing to the different neighborhoods in the city, you know, well, in many cases, we're going to have to build them. We're going to have to build them ourselves. And as long as we're doing that, let's, you know, we're not going to be, it's not going to be the most opulent movie theater, but it's not going to be, you know, what everybody's image is perhaps of an art house, which is that sort of rundown kind of experience. We wanted to operate clean, you know, that's the Hemingway phrase, a clean, well-lighted place for books. You know? But they were, you know, clean, comfortable, you know, auditoriums. And yeah, and over the course of my 30+ years in the business, one of the things that I focused on was, you know, at least periodically trying to, when we weren't busy building new theaters, we were trying to go back into the older ones and fixing them up.
And that's really cool. Oh, go ahead, Sergio. Sorry.
So, Tish, I have a question that's somewhat related. You've been to many screenings of Only in Theaters. What was the best experience and what was the worst experience? Like, no one showed up maybe, or maybe a show got canceled, or people hated the screening, versus 500 people who loved the show, or some other thing that happened.
I have several favorites, but it's terrible. I feel like I'm being mean to the other people. My very favorite screening was here in Seattle, because we moved to Seattle during the pandemic and we have a new life here. And several of the people in our condo complex came to be there to support us.
Nice.
And it was so sweet and so wonderful. And it was right after we had just finished a 10-day, the 10-day Bay Area. Or am I mixing it up?
It just came back.
I love the 10-day Bay Area. I loved every screening there, and family and friends coming. But it's so wonderful when you have people you love in the audience. Oh, our first one at the Royal with Raphael and Jenna, and the whole theater was filled with friends and family. You can't, what's not to love? And getting a standing ovation, and there is a sweet moment. It has nothing to do with being my favorite or my not favorite, but it was a very touching moment. The first time Greg's father saw the film, Raphael and Greg and a film critic and Greg's dad, Bob, were doing the Q&A, and Raphael very gingerly looked at Bob and he said, "Bob, what did you think about the film?" And he handed him the microphone, and his dad said, "Well, I really liked the first half." It's all uplifting, and he got to see his own father and mother and relatives from, back in Germany back in the day. And then he just started crying, and he said, "I didn't know how much my son was suffering and what he was going through." And I looked around, and everybody in the theater was crying at that moment. And it was a sold out theater. It was sad, but it was touching and it was real. And Raphael, made a film that brought up that kind of emotion in people. So
That's a really good memory. How about Greg and Tish? Any horrible situations during the release? Yeah, and you don't have to be super specific so that people don't get in trouble.
Well, there are always screenings when you want more. There's short of a sold out auditorium, there's always a chance for having more. And yeah, certainly in those situations where the auditorium is is not packed, and you've made the effort to get out there and be present for Q&A. It's frustrating, but look, we're in a period of time right now when we're trying to get people back to the art houses. We're still rebuilding the audience, and we understand. There's no blame. I mean, we understand everybody's dealing with in a difficult situation, and this isn't the easiest movie to sell to an audience. So, I mean, look, we had a great experience screening the film in Monterey. They, coordinated. It was at a commercial movie theater in Pacific Grove, the Lighthouse Cinemas. It was coordinated by one of the local synagogue, and shocking, not shocking. I mean, it was great. There were over 100 people in the auditorium on a Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon. We were thrilled with the turnout. I've now heard that the theater's closed down.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I read about it. Very sad.
And and the family that owns the property is trying to consider what they can do to bring it back. And actually, because we have some family in the area and perhaps some connection to them, we're going to try and have a conversation. But
Awesome.
that was particularly difficult. Not the screening itself, but the subsequent realization that that some of these locations are still struggling to get their footing.
We were in we had a beautiful screening in Berkeley, and halfway through, one of the audience members said, "Is there anything you can do to help the situation? We had 21 screens and we're down to this one last screen in Berkeley." That was pretty sad.
So I mean, I guess to answer your question, Sujewa, I mean, the fact is that we've had audience after audience members say it's undeniably moving, which is also a quote a critic as well. But the family story, their journey in this is undeniably moving, and I'm we were in Bethlehem, PA, which is a steel town. Also didn't know anything about Laemmle, but certainly had an experience about a giant industry kind of making a shift, and they were also profoundly moved. We were in Galway in Ireland, and they don't necessarily know Laemmle theaters, but they absolutely resonated with it. This is a film that ultimately, the audience members who come, it's somewhat preaching to the choir, but it does, we've heard over and over again, people saying this is one of the first movies I've come back for, or, I'm so excited to be back in a theater. Or I had one 9-year-old see it and say, if I ever go to a movie, I only ever want to go to a Laemmle theater, which made me so happy. But on and on and on, the film, we didn't start this way, right? I mean, we really started, as I say, about the legacy, but really we backed into a zeitgeist, and the zeitgeist really is all of us now trying to figure out what is it with things shifting. And for so many reasons, it's not just streaming. There's so many reasons, right? That really sort of frame this, and it is hopefully a sort of a reminder or sort of a clarion call to sort of say, oh, right, I love the movie experience, right? I mean, you can turn on the streamer of your choice and basically get the movie. And for me, it's equivalent of like burger, eat, again, there's that whole, I mean, it's even the turn of phrase is, binging, right? We're binging the content, there is an experience of the movie, of the art form, this 125-year-old art form in a theater, which is with a screen bigger than you, the scale, the opportunity to feel this, because we are diminutive against the 60-foot span of the screen. It takes us in a way, and I don't care how big your television is, there is no way to be able to translate that. In addition to that, being in a room with other people who, really amplify the emotional experience, whether it be the laughing or the crying or the laughs of recognition or whatever it is, or just the feel of it, it lands in a different way. And again, we have spent, all of us, I have, a really intimate relationship with my couch, thanks to, the pandemic. Like I've spent a lot of time on my couch. And what I've learned after the pandemic is that I don't need to spend more time on my freaking couch. I want to get up and out. Right. I mean, and this is, if the pandemic has taught us anything, it's like, come on, there's a big life out here, wear your masks or do whatever you need to feel safe, but go out and live your life. And so getting back to the theaters, this emerged. This was not, I didn't start here. This is really what bubbled up. It was the champagne bubble of the conversation that happened as we were doing this, which really was, this is an extraordinary experience. And we are at a very crucial moment to be able to sort of decide whether or not that's still important to us. As we hear anecdotally about more and more and more and more theaters close. We were in New York, and a giant theater, Sinopolis, closed. There's another one in Brooklyn that closed. Of course, there are all these other theaters that closed there. And we're going to Boston. There's also another theater, beautiful theater there, that's a family-owned business. Again, similar to the Laemmles, 44 years, and they've just sold the theater. They're all holding their breaths. Can it be a nonprofit? What's the next step? Just like this theater, perhaps in Monterey. All of these family businesses, or businesses that really have been really piloted by people that care about the medium, or care about film. And why is that important? It's important in terms of programming. But let me just talk about this from a from a filmmaker point of view. Holy Moses! You make a movie, and in a situation you're gonna get a platform in Los Angeles to show your movie. That's everything. It's everything. I mean, like, how do you get up above the noise? Like, hey, I made a movie. Okay, where is it? It's on my hard drive. Oh, cool. Well, send me a link. Maybe I'll get around to watching it. I mean, we slave as filmmakers and as impassioned zealots, sort of insane, kind of like cult members of this society of making movies. And at the end of the day, how do you actually get to a place where they can actually be seen, or where we can actually sort of find our audience? That's what a movie theater does, and it elevates the art, it amplifies the experience, and these are precious. These are, it's referred to in the film by many people. These are temples. These are sacred spaces that hopefully we can continue to be reminded of how important it is. Yes, of course you can watch it on streaming. Yes, we will eventually be on streaming. Yes, but why is it important to see it in the theater? Because that's how it was meant to be seen. That's what it's about. And once these theaters are gone, many of them, they are gone forever, forever. So this is hopefully a reminder of get thee to a movie theater. That's sort of really what's sort of at the bottom of this.
On a practical level for indie filmmaker, sorry, this is quick. The way I met Ian is because I didn't know him, because my movie got programmed to an art house in Chicago, and then Ian heard about it, then he saw it, then he liked it. So and that theatrical run really helped my career with fundraising for the next one.
Right.
Art houses are super important, and that's why I try to help with saving the art houses.
Yeah, no, for sure, it's important.
Now, there's a lot of talk now, because I did several podcasts during the pandemic with colleagues, fellow critics, talking about, lamenting, like, is this the death of movie theaters? We were early days, we didn't know if we were going to have movies to watch, or if there'd be people around to watch them, right? But as the situation evolved, some businesses came back, some businesses didn't, and it was always a question of, now people can go back to the theaters, but they have to be wearing masks, and there's limited seating, limited screenings. Now we've got, 2021, 2022, 2023 is the sort of the resurrection story of Spider-Man No Way Home, Top Gun Maverick, Avatar. John Wick is blowing up records this weekend, but those are all mainstream pictures. And from, listening to what, to this conversation tonight, it seems like downstream from the big marquee blockbuster films, the indie houses are and productions are in a lot of trouble. Do you see, and I know this is kind of tangential to the documentary, but in a way it's not, do you see potential for, what's the blockbuster, what's the Top Gun Maverick of the indie scene that could really kind of be a shot in the arm to save these theaters. I mean, I think of something like RRR, which I was able to see at the Music Box. I mean, the place, there were times when you couldn't hear anything except the thunderous applause and stomping of the feet. I thought they were gonna like tear the place down. Everyone was so overjoyed. But yeah, what is your prescription? What do you see as hopeful notes for the future of the indie theaters?
Well, I mean, look, arguably, we've had our Top Gun Maverick. It's a film called Everything Everywhere All at Once. So look, I think the bottom line is there's a younger audience that has come back, that is more just was more comfortable coming back into movie theaters from a health standpoint, and was looking for something outside of the mainstream to embrace. And that film certainly did very well. Won the Academy Award, but box office wise as well. If films like Tar and Triangle of Sadness and Living and other pictures are underperforming what they may have done pre-pandemic, that just shows that there's still work to do, that the audience has not been rebuilt. That's not necessarily about streaming. In fact, I don't think it's about streaming at all. I think that's about the fact that our connection with that audience, which were regular moviegoers, is broken from 13 months of closure. And we have not gotten them back in, which means they're not seeing trailers. They're not seeing, posters. Film criticism has changed dramatically. The LA Times will go, it used to, you'd open the Friday paper and you'd see a dozen reviews in print. And now you open the Friday newspaper and there's one review in print. There are no ads in the LA Times for movies. And when you do see a film review in print, it runs with a warning about COVID, even now in March of 2023. I think, look, it's just, this is an asteroid which has hit the ecosystem of art house moviegoing. And, we've survived. But the environment has not grown back around us. The forest needs to come back in its full and mature form until we can really make a comparison. And we're just going through various stages of rebuilding. And
Greg, okay, go ahead. Okay, I'll ask the question. How big was the American art house economy? Like how many theaters? 400, 500? And financially, how big was it? How many hundreds of millions?
Look, I honestly can't give you that answer. I'm sure there are people that can, probably the National Association of Theater Owners or somebody else would have that information about how many, what is an art house movie. At the end of the day, look, if someone sees an art house movie in an AMC theater, well, first, God bless whoever the programmer was at that AMC theater who booked an art film. But God bless the audience for finding it. And look, I compete with AMC, and I don't necessarily want that to be the only environment that's available to. But if what's important is seeing a movie in a movie theater, and if AMC is doing that work, well, again, God bless, and that's great. One of the interesting impacts of the post-pandemic recovery is that there, as much as certain commercial films were doing as much business as they did pre-pandemic, there weren't enough of them. So there were still holes. And you do see films like Decision to Leave, After Sun. I can think of a number of titles from last year that played in a lot of commercial movie theaters. Now, what happens when Hollywood gets back to releasing the same number of films, of wide release films, and all of a sudden there isn't room at those commercial movie theaters anymore, or they're not interested in playing those films, as interested and as available? The art houses again reach the place where they're vitally important to the economic, not just the economic life of that film, but sort of the commercial, not the aesthetic and cultural life of that film. Because how does those films only get into the conversation when they play in a movie theater?
Yeah.
But again, even that Decision to Leave, $2 million in box office. That's fairly close to double what Burning did pre-pandemic for a Korean film. That's more than Drive My Car, or just a little bit, just less than Drive My Car, which was a Best Picture nominee. So we have films that are doing business. But yeah, there is that traditional art house film that is only doing 60 to, well, I'll say 60% of pre-pandemic level box office.
Now, earlier on, I had mentioned that I thought only in theaters reminded me a lot of Jaws. And I want to explain that while we still have some time.
Because they're both very scary to me.
You should know he basically hasn't gone into the ocean since seeing Jaws in the 1970s.
Forgive me, sorry.
No, it's, well, so you're the reason for that tagline on the sequel poster, just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water. All right, so we're coming, as we've been talking about, we're coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. It's similar to Jaws in the way that only in theaters is, in the way that the giant monster is sort of hinted at, obscured in the film until the big bloody climax of it. In the case of only in theaters, the little teases we get of the monster are in the title cards that show the dates, and little bits of dialogue here and there. You're looking at 2019, like a lot of it happens in early 2019 up through mid to late 2019. And because we're watching a documentary about movie theaters that's coming out now, we know what's coming. It's interesting that the whole streaming conversation comes in, because honestly, with COVID and everything dominating the conversation, I had forgotten that the big concern about movie theaters back at that time was, oh my God, what are we going to do about this pandemic of streaming content that's keeping people at home instead of going out to the cinema? But there is this definite point in the film where we take that dramatic turn to the third act. We think that the movie's over, and it feels like in another reality, it would have been the happy ending. I don't want to give anything away here, because I definitely want people to go out and see this in the theater. But then COVID happens, and it is the shark attacking the boat, and the three of you are sort of Roy Scheider standing up on top of that bow, trying to not get eaten. I don't know which one of you would be Quint. I hope none of you are, but but the point is, there's such dramatic tension watching this movie, knowing that what's coming is coming, and we don't know how it's going to affect this family that we've been watching and kind of falling in love with. How are they going to deal with all of this on top of the struggle that they've dealt with up until this point? When you're shooting a documentary like this over the course of 2.5 years, and then you get struck by a pandemic, it has to reshape the storyline. Raphael, you kind of talk about this, but my question is, how do you as a filmmaking unit, Raphael and Greg and Tish and everyone else who is sort of involved in it, how do you hold on during something like this where everything's being locked down? There's paranoia about, wearing masks, and people don't want to be close to each other, and bubbles and all of this stuff. Was there ever a time when you thought, we have to stop this, we have to shut this down? Or was it, well, we have nothing else to do because we're kind of locked up and, everything is kind of going to hell, we might as well push on with something positive?
Right. I mean, it's there's so many things I could respond to. I mean, the first thing I want to say is, by the way, just a note, which is that, Greg and Tish and the family all allowed me to do this, but they had no editorial control over this, even to a point of actually, Greg saw it for the first time in front of an audience at Santa Barbara Film Festival. The entire thing cut, finished, locked, done, and that was very much a personal commitment on his part to kind of not interfere. That said, the thing that I had always hoped, there's so many interesting things that I could have sort of, when you're making a doc, particularly about something with such a big canvas, the danger I've learned is that, you see a bright, shiny object and you kind of gallop off in that direction, like, oh my God, look at that, look at this thing over here. And then basically everything kind of falls apart. What for me was the kind of the spine of this story that really always was my North Star, was the family. It was the family, the family, the family, and a family that is, in this case, very loving, very connected. There's a beautiful love story that emerges, obviously, here between that we discover as we go. In addition to that, I mean, that's always been there, but that we get invited into. We also, in the midst of all that, you know, my hope was that this film would play to both people who love film, that is, people, you know, film geeks like us, but also to play to people who weren't, you know, that it wasn't sort of a Hollywood, I don't know, bootlick story, as it were, that it wasn't going to be yet another Isn't Hollywood Great story, right? It was really, it is a story about a family business, really bottom line. That was the cornerstone of all of this, and that's what held it together for me. So the journeys that we go through, you know, I have heard, and it makes me. I mean, it was very much when I would wrestle with myself at night, because I would be sitting with whatever interview that we'd done that day and think, like, where the hell is this all going to go? I would always say to myself, it's the family, it's the family, it's the family. It's like a mantra. It's the family, it's the family, it's the family. And it helped me kind of keep it together. You know, people who've watched this, who had their businesses, their family businesses or other businesses, and understand the dynamics and understand the complexities of that, multi-generational businesses that really feel the weight of both legacy and also how to be able to kind of find, you know, what the next step is, particularly under great challenges. That's what ultimately where we aimed the ship, and again, I hope in that sense that it's, you know, it has had a wider audience, I think, as a result. As far as where we got, you know, look, there were days. This was before a vaccine. This was before any tests. We were a bit flying blind, and there was, you know, obviously we do a series of kind of Zoom interviews with Greg that really kind of really document some of what happened. And going back, when you see it all together, it's like, oh my God, that happened, and then that happened, and then that happened, you know, in such a compressed period of time. We've all kind of, you know, I mean, as if nothing else documented that time. But even that said, you know, the pandemic section of the movie is only 6 or 7 minutes, so this is not a pandemic movie, right? This is really I mean, that is a you know, denouement in a way, you know, but it is at the end of the day really this longer journey, and sets us up for what's next. I don't know, Greg. I mean, when there were days we had a very small crew, we would come out and we shot with Greg on a few days. You know, again, Greg was open to this. We all, at that point, I think we had some sort of protocols of social distancing and shields and masks and, you know, I don't know, sprays and things. And so we were following that. You know, but you know, again, Greg was open to trying making this work. I don't know. How was that for you, Greg, in terms of that process? Us coming out and filming you, I don't know. Was it? I mean, we
well, look, I guess at some point I was comfortable with the idea that Laemmle Theaters was going to survive. What that would take, I wasn't quite clear on. And you know, we made a series of very difficult decisions, but to ensure that was, you know, going to happen, and I still believe it's going to happen. It's just a question of how long it's going to take, and you know, and that's both time and, you know, dollars and energy. But I'm committed to that, and I do believe it.
Now, you are now in Seattle, and you're still running Laemmle Theaters out on the, you know, out in California. Are there plans to, I mean, are you pretty much settled in Seattle now? Or are there plans to try and get back? I mean, I imagine that's got to be a great challenge of its own, trying to, you know, manage something from, you know, several states over.
Well, look, one of the nice things of the pandemic is we did learn that remote work is possible. So I've changed some of my responsibilities, but the things that I focus on in terms of film programming and marketing are things that I can do remotely. So that's not a problem. And I have a terrific team of people in Los Angeles who who love the business and who understand what it is that about how we do it, and I just trust them completely to keep an eye on things locally. In terms of Seattle.
I have no fantasies of ever leaving here. I mean,
Well,
yeah.
But I mean,
We go to LA every year for
yeah,
3
we
months.
do spend time in LA, and we'll spend more now that travel's a little easier. We're still in LA business, and I want to focus our energy there and rebuilding that core business in Los Angeles. But yeah, if there are opportunities that come because of closures or other things to work in other markets, it's in time, that is something that we'll give some thought to. In time.
What will Only in Theaters 2 will be about?
But
Yeah.
we're the last art house theater chain standing.
No, Only in Theaters 2 is going to be about us celebrating our 100th anniversary.
Awesome.
85
lovely.
now, so.
That's lovely.
And surviving hundreds of interviews for Only in Theaters 1.
That
You
know,
part's a pleasure.
I'll need 15 years to recover, but that I should be ready by then.
Yeah.
Raphael, you mentioned, I think in a way, rightfully so, that this is not a pandemic movie. But one of the things I think it does illustrate is, it does show a lot of what it means to have gone through the pandemic as an American, particularly as an American, business owner. There's a lot of kind of, I guess, misconceptions about what being a business owner means. It can mean, being some highfalutin CEO who doesn't, sits on his yacht and smokes cigars. That's kind of a popular conception, right? But there are also the people who are down in the trenches every day, working, tirelessly because they're passionate about it, because they believe in what they're doing. And I think that's what we see in the Laemmle family, not only Greg and Tish, but also their 4 children, and the legacy of the other Laemmles who are involved in the business. So I think that's, if you took the pandemic part out of it, if this was only like an hour-long film that had the kind of tidy, happy ending that it's almost the false climax of the movie, I think that would still be a powerful testament to it. But when we get into what happened with COVID-19, what happened with the what are referred to sort of as the George Floyd riots, and the general political turmoil landscape, a lot of people lost their businesses, a lot of people lost their lives and livelihoods, and there was uncertainty about what the future holds. It's a testament to the first 2/3 of this movie are a testament to the kind of spirit that is going to drive us forward as an optimistic people, even though we're probably going to get get battered all to hell. Greg, it was mentioned earlier that you are Tish was very much emotionally invested in your well-being, and so is the audience. I think that comes through very well. But yeah, I think that was something that struck me, is it's not just about movies, but it's about the people who believe in legacy, in business, in industriousness, in building something. And there's millions of people doing that every day. And I think that's the one of the messages of hope. Whether or not how well indie theaters do, or mega blockbuster chains do, we're not going to know. But what we do know is there'd be people behind all of that stuff trying to make it happen because of some degree of love or passion. That wasn't really a question. That was just me on a soapbox. I'm sorry.
No, it was really great. I mean, I look at it, what shines through is the caring, right? I mean, the caring. I'm here in Connecticut at the moment, and someone's telling me about, there's a pizzeria that opened, and there's a family business, and the guy comes out and shakes your hand, warms you in, and makes sure you have what you need. You like the crust, and make sure he says goodbye and say hi to your mom. There's a like he says, this is what I do. I love what I do. My whole life is, and this is my livelihood, and I love this. And you feel that when you walk into that pizzeria. It has that, the love in the business, right? The kind of the cold Arctic sort of feeling of a more corporate structure is very different. I mean, the country, the city. I mean, they're very different, right? And because when you're standing in one, you can feel it. That's what this is, the family that care, right? It's a family that care, and that is such an astounding thing. That's what struck me. That's what really, again, as an artist in the world, artists are the first to be sort of derided, yet at the same time, and sort of cast aside, like, what restaurant do you work at? And at the same time, that we know that it's the artists who really sort of lead in terms of the ideas and sort of vision and hold future, way. I mean, look what Star Trek has done for us, right? but the fact is that the vision that artists bring is so important, and having a place and a platform to celebrate that, and then having a family that cares about that. Holy Moses, that's what knocked me out, and that's what sort of brought me to this, and that's what kept me going, is this thought that there is actually someone that cares. Because when you make something, when you're an artist, and we're all alone with our struggling, trying to push our Sisyphean rock uphill, someone says, hey, Sujewa, come show your movie in my theater. Like, that's like, shit, man, that's everything. And it can open all sorts of doors, and that you don't get that from the glass buildings, with corporate ladders, and you just don't get that. And so this is an art form. It's a fragile art form. It's a robust art form, but it is an art form, and it is transformative, as great art forms can be. But it requires, it's a simple ingredient, but it's a part of it, which is caring, to actually allow it to happen. And again, the pandemic is the pandemic. It was real, but it also, in a way, is a metaphor for, the test of caring. Greg and I have a conversation back and forth about how, is this a hero's journey, or is he a protagonist? And I continue to sort of say, this is, this is a story about a man who continues to sort of align himself with his mission. And the mission is really about continuing to provide care for audiences, for film and for filmmakers. And that with all of the tests, all of the Herculean tests that he has to sort of, rings of fire that he has to sort of walk through, ultimately that's what we really kind of get a sense of at the end. And there's that sense of like, we made it. Like, here we're here. We made it. And that's what I believe is so ultimately also uplifting about the story, is that, wow, there are people out there that really do care. People are really there who can make a difference. And I, I'm glad I didn't go off and become a plumber, even though I probably would have been financially. I'm really glad what I did. I mean, it's a reminder of like how wonderful this is, and to be in a community. Anyway, I can go on, but that's really what this is about, and that's what's so important. And that's
there's a moment in the film. It's my favorite moment in the film, and I can't articulate it perfectly, but it's when Greg hits a point when you're interviewing him, and he's so down, he's so beaten down to the ground, and he says, I don't know what I was thinking with my vague European notion of legacy. And every time I see that moment in the film, I think that is what it's about. It's about legacy. I mean,
No,
it's not at all.
no, it's about community.
It's about community.
Right.
Community.
And
believe
the people, the small business owners, care about their community in a way that corporate culture does not.
Well, and that, I would say that there's a marriage there, because, what is a community except, I mean, ideally something that has a legacy, because it's very easy to get atomized into our own, individual, like it's all about us, and, forget about our neighbors. But that's what important. It's carrying on that tradition of community. I want to kind of close with this question, Greg. At least one point during the movie, one crucial point. Again, I'm going to dance around spoilers here, but you consider, what if I didn't do this anymore? as far as running Laemmle theaters. You know, what it would free yourself up to pursue other things. But I don't recall finding out what those other things might be. Can you share, like, what would you do if you weren't doing what you're doing?
I'm going to start. You know why you didn't hear that in the movie? Because it's not real. You can't not run Laemmle. You know, it's meant to be. He is Laemmle Theaters. It's his soul. He's attached. Oh my God, I love that puppy.
Who's our special guest star here?
The jailbreak. This is Ophelia.
Oh, hey.
She broke into the room. Hi, honey. Yeah.
Sorry,
no,
Tish, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yes, my next career is going to be a kayak fishing guide. So,
That you'll turn into a movie and then show at your theater. There you go.
that's right. And there'll be a shark. Gotta be a shark.
There you go.
Whoa. All right. Sujewa, do you have any other questions?
Go see, not a question, but advice to people, go see this great documentary in Chicago at the Music Box, amazing movie theater. Go talk to Greg and Tish Raphael, are you going to Chicago?
I don't think I'm going to be able to make Chicago, but I'll be in Boston, and I'll be in Worcester, and I'll be in Philly, and there'll be maybe a few others. So and then also we're going to be in LA, which is next week. In LA at 2 Laemmle theaters, which we're excited about.
This is the watching the movie in the theaters is the best way to see it, because you can't fast forward it, and you just have to get into the story. And visually, it's shot really well, mix of video and film. So yeah, it's a treat. Go watch it in the theaters.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, as we kind of touched on here, it is going to be at the Music Box this coming Saturday, April 8th. I believe it's the 4:30 p.m. screening. It's only in theaters, only one, opportunity to meet the Laemmles at the Music Box and check out this amazing film. I'll have the ticket information, all that down below, so definitely check it out. Yeah, I can't, on behalf of Sujewa and myself, we can't thank you enough, Raphael, Tish, Greg, for taking the time to talk to us about this journey. And yeah, congratulations on making the film. Best of luck, as you move forward. I definitely want to keep in touch, and I'm Team Laemmle all the way, even though I'm in Chicago. And are you gonna branch out? You're living in Seattle. You've got theaters in California. When are you gonna go nationwide and give AMC? When are you gonna become the AMC of the art house?
Yeah, never.
All right, fair enough.
But the Laemmles will be in
I just made a
Chicago.
big pitch for local control and local ownership. So, support your local art house. That's really, that's what I want. That's what I want.
I love that, because that's not what an AMC executive would say. Yeah, we're gonna go take over everything, and yeah. No offense to AMC, but kind of.
No, of course not.
All right. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Do you have anything that you want to talk about or promote, or how can people get in touch with you? How can they find you? How they keep up with everything you're doing?
Yeah, no, thanks. I mean, if you can go to Only in Theaters, our website, onlyintheaters.com. You can find us on Facebook, of course, and you can find us on Twitter and Instagram and all that other stuff. But there's a newsletter if you want to sign up for it at the website. We're the past Chicago and past these dates, we've spent a lot of time. Will be 70 to 80 cities that we'll played in, but there will be an afterlife, in that other realm, and you'll find us there, and we'll be talking about that in the coming months. But straight up, like Ian and Sujewa, thank you so much for caring as you have about theaters, about film, and about how you've supported people who are trying to really find their audience. You made a lot possible by doing this today, so thank you. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank
Great,
you.
our pleasure. Great seeing you guys again, and we will talk again soon.
All right.
All right. All the best. Take care.
Have a good one. Cheers.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.